a number of different panelists here. What I'm going to be doing is introducing them in turn. They each have the opportunity, if they want to show a slide or two to talk about what they're doing. And I want to start them off with what are the key things, what are the key features that have been added to their products in the last year or so, or probably since last DecisionCAMP, and then what new capabilities are coming up for the next year. So sort of where are you at, and what can you be looking towards? Okay, so what I'm going to do then is we will start out, and Guillaume from IBM, if you'd like to, if you have slides, you can definitely share your screen. If not, if you'd like to talk about the sort of the questions that I had in terms of the features that you've put in and new things that you have planned.
Okay, thank you. So can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I managed to build up one slide. As I understand, this is kind of the role here. And basically, this slide is just a repeat of what we have in the vendor corner. So it's going to be quite easy to remember. I just want to comment to it in 2 minutes. I think that's the time you gave us. So the major achievement that IBM did this year, the release of ADS, Automation Decision Services, actually that was released last Friday, so right on time for DecisionCAMP, which is a service that is part of the Cloud Pak for Automation. So you may know that we tend to group products that work together into Cloud Paks. And Cloud Pak for Automation is that. It's a grouping of products that are integrated together and designed to work together, so including BPM, content, etc. And so the part that we're interested in here for this audience is ADS, Automation Decision Services, which is basically the next generation that is coming alongside ODM. It's not a replacement, it's alongside it. And it has three main features or themes that are relevant. One is the integration with machine learning models. So there is a native integration for machine learning models where you can call machine learning models from rules. So values within the rules are actually the result of the invocation of an ML model that you've trained separately. There's also a great focus on capabilities to make the tool usable by business users. And that means on the decision modeling side, but also on interactions that are making sense for them, composition of decision models, versioning, etc. So features design really for business users. And then the third theme, major theme, is that the persistence of all of the decision artifacts within the project is actually done in Git, natively in Git, supporting branches, supporting modifications that are done externally, directly in Git by developers. So you can mix and match business people in the tool versus developers directly acting on the Git file system. And that leads to a very native and natural integration with any CI/CD or continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines, tools such as Jenkins or Bamboo or Nexus or whatever you want to use. So this is basically the announce that we've put in the vendor corner. And on the slide, I have a link. If some of you want detail, I can post it to the Slack channel if there is a request for it. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So I'll stop you sharing. And Fernando from FICO, it does not appear to be on the Zoom call. So I'm going to skip over to Carlos from Sparkling Logic. Can you, if you want to share your screen, or if you just have something that you want to talk about?
Carlos, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm getting too old for this. I suppose I don't know how to use these tools. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. I put together, 1.5 slides, and essentially to give you a sense of where we are. So the Smarts product has 9 years. We're release number 20, major release number 20. That was Toronto. We go by city names. The key achievements were we are a decision management platform which focuses a lot on the analytics side. So as opposed to being business process centric, we're very much analytics centric, very much data centric. And one of the things that we do focus on is decision insights or decision analytics. So we extended the support that we already had in terms of simulation into the real time. And that was the very big feature for last year. We did enhancements to the reflexive questionnaire, which is very useful in situations where you need to gather complex data from your users. And then a fair amount of analytics data integration, different types of data formats, different types of data sources. In the next release, we are putting a little bit of the accent back into the traditional rules management, space I've been in for like 20 or 30 years now. So we're going to pre-can. We have, the product already has capabilities, a lot of capabilities with respect to decision management lifecycle or decision lifecycle. We are going to be providing pre-built applications for customers and the ability for them to build applications that plug into the system. We're going to upgrade our support of DMN to DMN 1.3 and adding additional engines, both on decisioning and analytics. So SMART is a multi-engine platform. It's not just a single rules engine. It has multiple engines in it. And as we identify areas where we can help our customer base with engines, we simply add them to the roadmap. And most of them are, many of them are co-developed. And then finally, platform updates. We sell, as all the vendors in here, we sell to a very complicated customer base that includes IT. And IT is always asking for, platform updates, platform enhancement, the cloud, and Jacob has talked about that. The cloud has changed a little bit the picture, so we need to be on top of all that. That's about what I will share at this point.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Carlos. We're going to hear from Denis next.
Unmute.
You have the same problem I had, Denis.
Obviously, I need to unmute people when I call on them.
Denis is my friend. Yes.
Yes.
There we go.
Gray hair. I got to blame it on something. If it's not me, it's got to be something else.
But at least you got a haircut.
Yes, yes. Too bad. Everybody liked Beach Bum Denny except my wife. So guess who won? Okay, let me not take everybody's time with ridiculous things. Let me try to share. Here's the button. And share this and go. Oh, I need to move this a little bit. Okay, so at TriZetech, we're an enterprise software vendor, and we focus very much on the large view of the enterprise, mostly on the business side. So we offer quite a broad offering on the modeling aspects of your business, and we also offer the automation aspect to it. So our offering is pretty wide, from strategy to operation, from the outside in to the inside out, the view with modeling of strategy and more design thinking and brainstorming, to more strict analysis and models, and all the way to automation. So admittedly, decision automation is a part of what we offer, but not the only thing that we offer. And our solution is completely integrated into what we call the digital enterprise graph, which is a semantic graph behind everything. So as many of you can tell, by having a semantic graph of everything that is modeled, it gives us a lot of power, power that we don't yet fully exploit. So our roadmap is quite wide into what we can do with all that knowledge integrated. So on the DMN side in particular, we've done a lot of work from the beginning to make DMN or our automation to support the notion of decision as a service. So that's our core approach, is decision as a service. And it permeates into our automation of BPMN and CMMN. So the automation is always as a service. Now, on the new thing that happened in the decision automation side, we have this new approach that is called distributed decision container, which basically allow you to deploy with one click. Everything is one click. We're oriented toward business people very much. So you can deploy in one click a single decision as a microservice container. And this can then be deployed and scale linearly and horizontally in any way you want. So it's a very powerful way to deploy decisions that are done over and over and over. As many of you, we have clients that do millions of transactions a day, and sometimes millions of transactions in a few hours. So we have to have this scalability. So that's a big improvement or a new addition that we added to our decision environment. In the decision environment also, we completed the DMN 1.3 support last year. In my DecisionCAMP presentation, I introduced the notion of temporal reasoning, which was integrated in DMN 1.3. We have that full temporal reasoning capability within our environment. We also added, in years past, the integration of PMML, which provides us with predictive model execution within DMN. We also have REST call within DMN. If Gary is on the call somewhere, he's probably cringing. So we are moving a little bit away from the stateless view of DMN and introducing that you can actually do REST call from within a decision model to impact what's going on. We also introduced this year, due to our work in the healthcare industry in the last 3 or 4 years, heavy work there, we've introduced also the execution of CQL models, CQL being the clinical quality language model. And I would suggest, just to continue on the conversation in the last presentation, that this constraint integration would have to be more like PMML or CQL into DMN because it's a different solver. So you could not use the execution semantic of DMN to do constraint. You need a separate solver, and therefore the approach taken by PMML integration in DMN would be a better integration for what they're doing. Although we could use the same kind of drawings, when it comes to actual execution, you need to have this. So we're very working very hard in progressing DMN. Everything I presented this year in terms of new box expression should be live in the next few weeks or few months at the latest. Depending on the demands of our clients, we make things. Now, one big thing that we're introducing in the next couple of weeks, months at the latest, is a new environment that we call, because we take a suite approach as opposed to a single product. One new product that we're bringing in is called the Knowledge Entity Modeler. And the Knowledge Entity Modeler, for all those in the know, is bringing all the power of SBVR into the context of our modeling so that you can define deontic rules and concept map and dictionaries, and take these deontics rule and use them as structure of resource information onto decision model. So then you can have a fully integrated environment where a single common dictionary and a single set of rules, which should make Ron Ross happy. He's not here this year. So we're bringing all the deontic style of rule that Ron is such a big fan of into the operational decision modeling and decision environment for execution. So this will permeate across our BPMN, CMMN, and DMN execution, providing you with a fully integrated, semantically rich execution environment. And I'm open to questions.
Well, it's, I think if we can go through the different panelists and then we can circle back for questions. So it's, I'm going to stop your sharing and we're going to move on to Larry now. And he can give a little bit about what they're doing, and we'll see how we end up at the end.
So do you see my screen now?
It's yep, there we go.
Great. And so Sapiens continues with its decision suite, which is, I think, celebrating its 10th year this year. The Decision Manager, which is the modeling environment, is, and this is true of the whole suite, is going through a massive rewrite in what we call our next gen version. The first 3 limited releases have been made of that, and we're looking at a full release by early next year. That is, the whole suite is being rewritten as a cloud native suite. So Decision Manager is now available on the cloud, and I think about 70% of our clients have now moved to the cloud version, which is very encouraging. And by next year, I think all new customers will be on the cloud version. A new module that was introduced this year is Decision Viewer. It's a means to just view decisions, to bring a decision up off the cloud or locally and just view it. Decision execution has undergone also a cloud native development, and we now call that DaaS, Decision as a Service. So you can submit a decision to that service and automatically execute it. Decision deployment, we have introduced no new adapters this year. A lot of focus on DaaS, a lot of movement towards DaaS by our clients. So not a lot of movement on adapters, and not a lot of just new releases on Decision Info Hub, no major changes in the capabilities. One major new addition this year is Decision ALE, automated logic extraction, the means to actually extract decision models out of legacy code and ultimately out of documents, unstructured documents. We have so far successfully conducted our first COBOL projects, and there is again, that product is in early release. It's a combination of machine learning and Python code. Very successful introduction of that product. So in general, last year, this year, we also introduced our models, FHA models, Federal Home Loan Association. We introduced a whole suite of decision models for the mortgage industry, for that segment of the mortgage industry. And that will be a continuing theme in our work because of our significant exposure to the mortgage industry. We've decided to begin there, and we added 3 new clients in that product this year, which was pretty exciting. In addition to our new Next-Gen Decision Manager, as part of Next-Gen Decision Manager, we're moving towards compliance with DMN. So there's a significant increase in our compliance to DMN. We're still a little ways away from it, supporting principally the decision model rather than DMN. But we have one of the major changes in the new release is the new testing modules. The ability to test large-scale large-scale test suites and decision has always been a principal feature of the product. So we are really significantly expanding its capability and its scalability so that you'll be able to run very large-scale parallel operations of test and live data in the test module. So that really sums up what we've been doing this year. It's been an exciting year, probably our best year ever. We go back over our 10 years and 5 years as a part of Sapiens. It's been very encouraging to see how the market, how we've moved from evangelist in the marketplace to the market actually accepting and adopting decision management on a much wider scale. So I have to thank all my colleagues on this call and those beyond the call for all the work that they're doing in expanding consciousness about decision management, and of course Jacob and the DecisionCAMP. So thanks, guys.
Okay, great. Thanks, Larry. We're going to move on to Jacob now, as you can tell us a little bit about open rules and what's been happening there in the last year and what is going to be happening coming up.
Okay, you see my screen?
Yes.
Last year during DecisionCAMP, I announced a brand new product, Decision Manager, Open Rules Decision Manager. And the point was that while we could continue our 17 years old very reliable product and we have very reliable customer base, I thought it's time. A lot of things changed in the environment. We need super fast engine. We need to be specific for cloud environment. We need to better quick, better start time, low memory footprint. All these things pushed us in direction similar to rules when you don't want to do anything basically in runtime, minimize any overhead. And I can happily report you that we have a solid product now tested in a real world environment, and it shows all these features what we hoped for. And it's in addition, it has instant cloud deployment. And when I say instant, it means business people who developed and tested the decision models with one click can deploy the decision models on cloud, for example, as AWS Lambda, one of the most popular destination. And also as a side effect, now Open Rules successfully works, for example, on Android. We have customers who wants to install, not to go to cloud and server, and they even don't have internet connections, and they want to use our engine on each handheld devices. So, and because it's Android and because we are also reflection free now, it works really well on Android. And we became the first SaaS rule engine in the AWS marketplace. Hopefully the entire movement will join similar destinations. And if you look on deployment options, we have of course, simple Java API, Lambda, RESTful web services, Docker images, and all of them generated automatically without complex configuration options. That is not simple, and certainly not for business people. And I also want to tell you about second achievement. I always had problem with really large tables, and I always told the customers, don't make a table large, split them to small, they're not manageable. But when you go to real customers who's using your product for 6-7 years, suddenly you can see tables that have 10,000, 25,000, and not one but many tables of rules, and they also interdependent. It's not always single hit. It's not just simple lookup table. It's usually becomes quite complex logic inside, and they have serious justification for this. And these tables, as majority of vendors know, can slow down execution. So I thought traditional sequential execution tables do not fit this environment. And I have one very sophisticated developer who came up with the idea of new execution engine, and we introduced, instead of the word decision table, we introduced big table. And big table can have thousands and thousands rules inside, and still it would be executed extremely fast. It could be executed as traditional decision table, and it could be executed using our new self-balancing binary search algorithm, and performance just fantastic. It's from 10 to 100 times faster than traditional tables. So it makes at least one of our customers who really suffered of this is really happy, and I'm happy to share this news with you too. Okay, that's it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Jacob. We're going to call on Matteo next.
Yeah, you should be able to see my screen in a sec.
Yes.
And thank you, Sandy. Hello, my name is Matteo Mortari. I work for Red Hat. For what concerning updates and achievement and what we will be working next, actually we are already working on, so you will see more and more news. For updates about rules, I would like to just reiterate that we provided DMN 1.3 engine support of the DMN 1.3 standard simultaneously to the release, the publication from OMG, actually because we are also part of the RTF. This enables us to continue the development. Meanwhile, the RTF it's validating the changes. So this allows us to be always up to date and to deliver immediately at a full publication. We also have in rules what was presented last year at DecisionCAMP as part of DecisionCAMP, the executable model, which provides really compile time enhancement and very, very interesting runtime improvement. This is used in many projects. And this is now the default when you use rules from a Maven-based project. So we are confident in that, and that's why we put it as the default. For last year at DecisionCAMP, we presented Cogito. We are heavily working on that. It's our next-gen cloud-native based business automation suite. It includes the best of the breed of the products that you see here. For instance, Jules, DMN execution, of course, BPMN. There is also something that I would like to mention that is maybe interest of this group and also the other vendors, is that we are working with the serverless workflow specification, and you can see that the CNCF. And also we have a Kubernetes operator for deploying a Cogito-based application on the cloud and Kubernetes cluster. For what concerning Cogito tooling, this might be a quick bit for the practitioners and modelers out there. We have the tooling available as the VS Code Marketplace, but as well, if you open the browser right now and you type in the address URL dmn.new or alternatively bpmn.new, likewise, you can open a document now, you can open directly our editor. So this follows some Google domain extension for .new. I invite you to try because it's a very simple way, even if you want just to schema things out. So we've seen how the DRD is very helpful for modeling business requirements during these days. So I invite the practitioner to use dmn.new in the browser, and they can have quickly a canvas compliant with the DMN specification. And we've seen in the yesterday the presentation of Sylvie, and today during the keynote and the presentation by Brian, a lot of interest in the general AI and machine learning combination with the decision automation and decision management. So I invite all folks to follow the Trust AI initiative that we've been working on since last year, and we are working actively on right now, that provides a set of capabilities for monitoring, tracing, auditing, and explainability. So that's all going on right now. You can join the conversation at key.org or at developersredhat.com. I thank you for your attention.
That's great. Thank you, Matteo. So we're going to finish up going through our panel as sort of the first run with Alessandro. If you'd like to share your screen, if you have some slides or
yes,
a slide.
Thank you. Just a second. Oh,
okay, looks good.
Okay. Here we are. So, hi all, I'm Alessandro Turco. I'm product manager of Cardanit. Cardanit became a product 1 year ago after a few years of research experiments and prototypes. Hence, our main achievement of 2019 and 2020 is being here as a vendor. So, Cardanit offers process and decision modeling in a modern web and collaborative environment. We launched the DMN editor last April and focusing mainly on DRDs, and we are going to release the decision layer, the decision logic, soon. Cardanit is a product of Esteco. Our company has more than 20 years of experience in engineering, simulation, and optimization. The digital twin of an aircraft wing and the digital twin of an enterprise are different, of course, but we believe that both disciplines can benefit from an exchange of knowledge and techniques. So the presentation you are going to hear from my colleague Dario tomorrow is an example of that. Our plan for the next few years is to grow Cardanit with essentially two ingredients, one from us So our expertise in numerical analysis, system integration, and user experience, and one from you, from the audience, so feedback from our early adopters. We are open to request advice, suggestions. Our tool is young and flexible enough to accommodate them without struggling with legacy features. So thank you all for your attention, and thanks to the organizers of the conference for giving us the opportunity of being here with you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alessandro. I think some of us who are looking at the Slack channel are having a laugh over Rolando's comment that the sneak peek at the DMN product brochures for 2021 from all the vendors will be now with super, super fast tables. Our clients can build faster systems that will drive the global economy off a cliff more efficiently than ever before. So hopefully it's not going to be quite that bad, but sometimes the automation of things that are headed in the wrong direction can be a problem. We didn't have any specific questions, but what I'd like to do is just offer to open it up, just kind of more of an open mic session. So if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. Try not to be too unruly at it, or I will have to start muting people or whatever. Matteo did say that if there weren't any other questions, he'd like to bootstrap the evergreen question for DecisionCAMP, how to evangelize DMN, and reminding vendors about participating in the TCK and building some common shared models there. Denis pointed out that the TCK 1.3 test results are going to be published tomorrow, so that might be a good place to kick off the conversation. Anyone?
Yes, so I would add that beyond the moniker of DMN, there is the whole movement of decision management, and I think most of the people in this meeting are a part of that movement. And we discussed a lot yesterday about how awareness is our biggest challenge right now globally in the market. But one thing that I also remarked is that yesterday our discussion about awareness problem it wasn't our problem, it was their problem. It was the analysts, that don't know, it was the others that don't know. But fundamentally, it's not their problem. That problem of awareness rests right with us, all the vendors, all the practitioners of decision management. If anybody is going to generate some awareness in the market, it's us as a community, and nobody else. Don't expect the analysts to go and dig out decision management from the Babak. They won't. We have to show them the benefit of this, and we have to continue to evangelize wherever we can have a platform on webinars, the global benefit of decision management in the large, and then our own specific solution in the small that brings the differentiation that we can bring to the market.
Very well said, Denis. I couldn't agree with you more. And I've spent quite a lot of time this year briefing analysts. And there's one thing every one of us can do is brief the analysts, because the more you brief them, the more they'll publish. That they're hungry for it, that they're open to it. Pick up the phone and call them. You don't have to be a client, just brief the analysts. And if every one of us were to spend that time to dedicate that time to do that, I think that would be significant. But the other thing we can do is publish. So, Mark from Allstate came here 2 years ago and said, guys, I couldn't sell this to my management because they couldn't find any publications in the business journals, not the IT journals, not the technical journals, but in business journals. They couldn't find anything about decision management. So publish, brief. I mean, it's our job. We have to do it.
And we have a bit of a discussion going on Slack about, is there an increasing market for DMN? And obviously it's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. Is like, the market's not going to increase without some sort of knowledge about that, but are you starting to see more projects? And that was from Jan Van Tanen, but Brian Stuckey said that there was a steady drip, but that it's still a lot of tire kicking. Is that what you guys are seeing from the vendor side?
No, we're seeing the true demand. I've been in this for 10 years. kind of coined the phrase 10 years ago. And in the first 5 years, it was like trying to find water in the desert. But we've seen a steady, I wouldn't call it a huge demand. I wouldn't say they were at the top of the hype cycle. But I've seen a steady demand, particularly from larger institutions, financial institutions in particular.
And James Taylor jumps in and says, is this demand for DMN or demand for decision management? It's like, obviously, it's very closely tied together in the minds of many people, but there's kind of two different things going on there.
Yeah, that's certainly my comment. We're seeing a lot of uptake. And as Larry mentioned, it's not a push, it's a pull now. So we've turned from a push to a pull situation. We're seeing very large project. What is true though, what is the caveat is that these seems to be a lot of greenfield project. So what we're seeing is a lot of new greenfield project starting on decision management and more specifically on DMN. And I imagine that the second wave will be a lot of legacy transformation into this realm. So, but right now we're seeing amazing uptake from our perspective, at least.
Oh, that's good. Denis, I was just our little side conversation we're having about the TCK being released, test results being released tomorrow. There may be people who are on the meeting who don't really know what the DMN TCK is. Maybe you could give like a little short précis of it and just why it's important, and even if you can give a little preview of what is going to be released tomorrow.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, I'll defer this to Matteo because Matteo is much more active in the TCK than I am.
Sure.
I'm a side participant, Trizatec as a company, but Matteo is involved in daily operations.
Thank you, Denis, for that, for the plug. And actually, I'll just talk here, not with my red hat on. So I will talk more as a community contributor, but of course, being a Red Hat developer, fortunately, I'm also glad that I can contribute to the TCK, which is an open source project. Is community driven. So it's important to say it's not an activity out of OMG. It's really a community of vendors and practitioners sometimes that we join together. And what we are trying to achieve there is that as you can define a DMN model, actually we are making sure that we have a set of consistent and DMN compliant test cases that execute the same across all the vendors that participate. This is very important because one of the, I would say, the feature that I personally like the most about DMN is that what you draw it, what you model, actually you can immediately execute it. So it's very important that when a vendor says, oh, we are compliant with DMN, we offer DMN. It's important that the vendors, sorry, the practitioners or who uses DMN can verify that and be sure what is the level. Last year at DecisionCAMP, we discussed about conformance level and might be a too much, a not very granular way to assess how much you are compliant or if it is the best way to promote it or not. The TCK takes a very pragmatical approach. It's like we have a set of DMN models and we ensure that the results are executed the same across all vendors. This has proved actually very helpful also for us as a vendor because sometimes people come and propose test cases that we might discover in few cases bugs. This was especially true with DMN. I think it was 1.1. We had to really go back also to the RTF. So it's really a great community where to ensure that you have really DMN compliance. So what is going to happen tomorrow is that we moved the full test suite from DMN 1.2 to DMN 1.3. We don't do that in one shot, so we give it the vendor the time to update and migrate. And what we're going to publish tomorrow are the new results published by the vendors accordingly to the DMN 1.3. So this is overall the presentation, and it's really a community-based approach for many vendors to contribute in there, and also we welcome practitioner. Of course, as well, we support the vendors to onboard them in the case that they are not currently participating or for some reason they drop it off. So normally it's me. We also look at that sometimes when vendor had a few specific problems with the runner or something was not clear about how we publish this result. So it's really, again, I'm speaking as a community developer here. I really invite anyone to come and collaborate on this open source project. I think it's really great to show the capability that we as vendor, of course, we are in competition than in the market, but there we can really contribute together also to improve the DMN specification. And just one point that I would say there is that really one thing that shows is sometimes from the TCK, we went to the OMG RTF to say some part of the specification are not good. Some part of the specification are not very clear. And we made it super clear so that we are all aligned on the same understanding. And thank you for the opportunity of reminding of the TCK.
Okay. Can you give us a sneak peek of who the winners and losers are that are going to be announced tomorrow? That's just between us. We won't tell anybody. You know.
No, but there are, the only thing that I would say is that there are some vendors that we haven't heard from so long times, and some vendors that are maybe not participating, or I don't know if they are joining us through Zoom, that are always actually participating. So it's like there is our opportunity to have some common ground and to build together a community and a platform. And then, of course, different vendors will have differentiator capabilities and feature. But at least for what concerning open standards like DMN, it's shown really pragmatical results. So I invite everyone, not only vendor, but also practitioner, analyst, everyone to jump in.
Yeah, and that is a very important point. The whole idea is the vendors coming together to build something better for everybody. It's really the tide that raises all ship. We've seen it, I've seen it with the BPMN model interchange working group. We've been doing it for many years now. The last demo of capability we did last Monday of BPMN interchange brought in 650 people live for that demonstration. There is, when the community come together and everybody promote this globally, there is uptake. So it's really up to us, because we each have our own community, but when we join all these communities together, it becomes a demand that we generate. Because in the end, that's what we want. We don't want to go hunting for specific clients and fight on the one clients all together. We want to generate demand so that there's plenty for everybody there. And the only way to do that remains with us. I'm convinced that we make the difference as a community. It's not people that will come and ask us to do that for them. So we have to do it.
Okay. Jan also points out that there's, if you take a look at Google Scholar, there are now a lot of scientific papers on DMN and decision management. So even in the academic world, there's a big increase in interest in it. Carol Ann asked, what about decision management usage out there? Are the typical applications still what we're seeing today? Are there new types of applications that are leveraging decision management technology? So what are kind of the new and exciting uses of decision management or DMN that any of you are seeing? And definitely anyone on the panel, but if somebody else in the audience has something to add, definitely hop in here.
We certainly see a very broad set of usage. Like anybody that develops software, you always end up with clients and never thinking your tool could be used in such a way. But we've seen many, many different wide usage of the technology. Everything from data cleansing for machine learning to metadata tagging into ERPs. We have a client that meta tags all his data through our decision engine of all the single transaction they do on their SAP ERP. So these are millions and millions of transactions a day. So there's a lot of varied use case that we never thought of that are coming up, certainly from our perspective.
That was a surprise for us too, and it started very early. I remember in our book we said, well, we don't see data quality as being a principal focus of the decision model. Boy, were we wrong. It's so widely used in data modeling of all kinds, data quality, data metadata analysis. Sorry.
I can stress one important trend. we can see interest not in specifically in decision management, but we can see changes in architecture, how people build the application, not to do once and call our service and gone. They building majority of people now, they understood that they have to build always running application. And to support always running application, it means invocation of our services or any other services, including database interface, graphical interfaces, communication with the repository, all other system go through what we used to call message bus or enterprise service bus, and now it's certainly event streaming platforms like Kafka, or just recently introduced, you can see very strong movement on platform vendors like, for example, AWS. They have 3 different systems, SNS, SQS, steps, and they all not satisfy everything. So they introduced on top of this a few months ago, Event Bridge that integrates all of them and adds rules. And so basically, I don't think we will be big players in this area. It's really up to big vendors, infrastructure vendors, but this is a trend when we talk to customers, when we respond to RFPs and other things, that certainly is here, and we should, as a vendors, should adjust our offering to make them extremely good citizens of these new infrastructures. And but more than that, I think we can get pieces from this infrastructure because they, as always, technical people oriented. Their configuration extremely difficult. Even such good vendor as AWS does not provide documentation. You have to guess so many things yourself, and we at the end it works, but it's still quite difficult. So we have to take all business logic out of infrastructure mechanisms and put them in our own services they can easily invoke. In particular, I mean, look on state machines. And I see many vendors, like Carlos probably can tell the same, provide state machines, and they're very user-friendly. But if you look on state machines in AWS or in steps, so this is JSON, you cannot understand anything, even if it's well structured unless you're expert. So I just think this is will drive us as service decision service providers in the next 1-2 years.
I think the most interesting facet of all of this is the fact that most enterprise architects now describe a business logic layer in their architecture, and this was never the case 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and now it's pretty common. So I think we're seeing a sea change in conceptual thinking.
I wonder what Carlos thinks about these changes or some other changes.
So sorry, I unfortunately dropped off for a few seconds, so I don't know what the question was.
No, we're talking about changes in infrastructure, in particular, including stateful applications and work different services. Do you see the same approach, or what is your take on this?
Oh, yeah, so one of the challenges that we have all as vendors when we sell is that you know, our value proposition is for business analysts, and business analysts need to be able to do all these things easy. I mean, you know, the one-click deployment, et cetera, all these things are important. However, in our sales process, and I assume it's the case for all of you, other colleagues here, we do have to deal with IT, and IT is the one that's facing all these huge infrastructure changes, and it's quite complicated. So you mentioned, Jacob, AWS, so you multiply that by 3 because you actually have 3 vendors, 3 cloud vendors that we need, that globally we need to support. And each one of them has multiple versions of each technology, not well documented, changing all the time. They're not all at the same level of Kubernetes, not all at the same level of Helm, not all at the same level of XYZ. So for an IT organization, this is extremely challenging. So what tends to happen, at least we see that in our customer base, is that, and you multiply that, you have to add another dimension to this, which is the pricing model. So it's not just that the technologies are complicated and diverse and all over the place. They're also very opaque with respect to their pricing. So what we see is that they are looking for simpler solutions. They're looking for something that essentially will enable them to do, in our case, the orchestration of the different pieces that make up a decision or a large decision application through, again, the same ease of use as you would do with just a pure decision with a point and click thing. So I do think that in the end, we will all have to support the baseline provided by the cloud vendors. But I do also think that it will take some time before those things consolidate and before we don't have to deal with competing offerings from the same vendor, at very different pricing things. I also want to stress just one thing. I mean, the cloud have one more virtue, which is that data is available. And I'm sorry to put my data hat here as opposed to my business process hat. But there is a lot of data available in the cloud and a lot of things that you can do and measure. And that creates the opportunity for essentially tracking the performance of decisions and enhancing the decisions. We take a lot of, in these conferences, we spend a lot of time talking about modeling and talking about making sure that the model is correct, etc., which is a very good thing to have, of course. But when you deploy, in the base, the bottom line that people are interested in is my decision actually performing the way I want. This used to be an issue, a more significant issue because it required infrastructure on-premise that customers might not have. The cloud makes this much simpler. So what I foresee is that we're going to get more pressure to provide tooling technology solutions that essentially enable business users at different levels to track business performance of the decisions that with the terminology and the semantics that they want. So I think that's going to be a much bigger pressure on us than the support of the low-level infrastructure technologies.
Gulam, you as IBM representative in quite unique position among all of us because your company provides both infrastructure and ODM or now ADS. What is your take on this question?
So the company is big, and in fact, yes, there is a part of it that provides a cloud, and there's a part of it that provides a decision product, but it's like two different entities. In fact, I would tend to concur with what Carlos just said, and I know Caroline is going to smile, but that's fine. I think it's quite important to focus on making the modeling and the monitoring of the decision accessible to the business, more so than the detail of the plumbing is becoming difficult to handle, and it's becoming a nightmare since the different cloud providers have different formats, different configurations. There's so much variability between those things. It's not well standardized that deployment becomes difficult. And part of, yesterday we started the microservice discussion, and what I was telling you on this point is deploying different decision services into microservices is a good idea, probably, but also brings along a lot of complexity that is going to make it harder for the handle the life cycle. And precisely the point that at least we're trying to do as IBM is to make the product accessible to business analysts. So to wrap complex things into user experience that is simple and easy to access. So the more we can hide this stuff, the more likely we are to be compelling to business analysts who are actually the ones modeling and writing the rules. So that's where we stand.
Thank you.
But one of the things we're seeing now is the complexity around orchestration of decisions in microservices, but in general. And the semantics in DMN don't support that, but the business wants control over it. So I think there's an area that we need to study. I know some companies are using, and I don't know if anybody saw the Goldman Sachs presentation at the Comundo conference earlier this year, but Goldman Sachs are using a boiled down version of BPMN to orchestrate their decisions. We do the same, we do something similar. In fact, I think they derived their idea from us. We see a lot of value in that capability of orchestration. Anybody got a view on that?
Larry, I think that comes back to the sort of the rule flow versus a process flow. We got to the process and rule discussion we had yesterday, a process and decision discussion we had yesterday. Is when I look at these rule flows, I think like, oh, that's a process. So why not orchestrate it with a process engine?
And why not? The issue is really stateless execution, not having to return to a process engine. So that's really what drove us and Goldman in these very large and complex decisions, that if you graph them in DMN, it becomes extremely difficult to manage. That's what drove us to adopting this process semantic within the realm of the decision. And it just became, I mean, it dramatically eased the burden on our users when we did that. So it's something between a process management environment and a decision management environment, because you need to restrict the palette quite dramatically of what the BPMN is capable of doing and what the BPM can do if you want to remain in stateless execution environment.
Yeah. I mean, that I know of, most vendors offer something that they call diversely, rule flow or decision flow. Essentially, the need to orchestrate pieces, different decision steps, one after the other, or in a, with logic in between. That has its place. I completely agree. And it is not process, and it is not low-level rule flow. It's not what DMN provides. I agree.
So that's why. Yeah, sorry.
But I think there was a presentation on that yesterday, or was it today?
Yeah, so I think it boils down again to the type of users who are actually able to perform those changes.
Yeah.
And business users, or at least the role policy, the role writers type of people can actually go ahead and change the role flow. It's a little bit challenging, right? But it's still part of the scope of a decision service. Whereas changing a process flow involves developers, integrators, quite a lot of people actually to sync up the various process apps. Yep. So it's not the same target users.
Correct.
Yeah, I think.
But there is that need. Yeah, there is a need for that orchestration that business analysts can actually control, and it's a midway in between. I agree.
Yeah,
that's what in general people end up calling decision flows.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, adding decision flows to our decision environment certainly seemed to unleash a lot of energy, and now we're actually looking at, a broader set of semantics for that orchestration.
Yeah, if you continue, you'll reinvent BPMN.
Actually not, and I know that's the way one thinks, but actually
that's not the way one thinks. That's the fact of life.
Not really, because BPMN is not stateless. BPMN
can be stateless.
It certainly can be, but you'll have to limit your palette quite significantly.
Well,
and we do use BPMN. I don't know. I mean,
if I only want decision table out of DMN, I have to restrict the palette quite drastically as well. So that's a usage of the standard. It's not a limitation of the standard. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, but this is process. Everything that is orchestration like this is process. I mean, and even in the case of BPMN, there's a big side of BPMN that's very underused, but very extremely powerful. It's all the choreography work. There's a lot of capability there for choreography. So no, I'm sorry. This is not a good argument. So if you don't want to adhere to BPMN, that's okay. But don't say BPMN cannot do this and do that. You have to read the spec. You have to.
I'm not sure I said that at all. I'm not sure I said that at all.
I don't think any of us is saying BPMN doesn't fit.
Yeah.
All we're saying is that there is something in between a true business process and dependency diagrams like in DMN that has its value and its place, and that's decision flows. And the way you express them, whether it's BPMN or something else, that's a choice. But that's the entity is there. That's what we mean.
Right.
So
We
I
express
agree
it
with that.
purely in BPMN terms. The only issue is the context.
Sorry, say it again.
We express our decision flows in pure BPMN terms. The only issue is the context and the limitation of the palette, that's all.
Yeah.
So I agree. But
okay, well,
that'll be a first, Denny. That'll be a real first.
Yes, you're agreeing. Oh my, we should end on that note.
That's not true, but fundamentally, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
The important is not the specific language, is how do we solve the problem, and is the concept in which we solve the problem. So for example, my only objection to the CDMN element was that it is a different solver. It is a totally different semantic of execution. And so when you call it DMN, then what does DMN mean? Just a bunch of drawings on a piece of paper? I don't agree with that. I think those standards have a profound semantic definition that we have to augment if we need to, but we cannot just bastardize just because I draw a couple of shapes on a diagram doesn't make it DMN, or just because I draw a couple of shapes on a piece of paper doesn't make it BPMN.
Denny, I just have a little bit disagree with your example, because in 20, before DMN, it was ZDM, and I introduced implementation of ZDM similarly, and instead of rule engine, I use constraint engine, and I just transform decision model to simple constraint satisfaction or optimization problem, and it still continue to work. It can be considered like two different engines, but it's still possible to use a different engine to execute the same decision model, and it means there are still opportunity to create, to add to DMN different implementation engine that will expand the functionality of DMN to produce not one but multiple solution, not one but the optimal objective. This kind of it still could be part of DMN, even if these researchers today didn't offer this.
I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying is that, and that's why we have the DMN TCK, is that we want to make sure that when you take a DMN model, no matter where, no matter how, you're going to get the same results.
But Denny,
so different result from different engine, we're back into how can you trust the black box?
But here, this is where things begin to break, because we can't submit a decision flow to the TCK. And the TCK doesn't have a BPMN engine, so it can't. So what do? We submit single decisions that are part of a larger decision flow. I think your argument breaks in that regard. So the TCK is no longer, functionally useful if you're going to use decision flows.
I disagree with that. Sorry. Sorry to step in, but it's like to declare that it's useless. I think it's a bit far-fetched.
Right, so I'll modify the word useless, but that's the difficulty.
No, I have to say though, if you look at the TCK, there are actually the different, I would say, flavor of tests that you will find in there. So some flavor of DMN models that you find in the TCK are very, I would say, sort of like unit test. Like if I make 1 + 2, I should expect 3, and this is trivial. But then as well, we have people that come from the fields or from industry verticals. I mean, fields that especially more you vendors more than me know very well, who have submitted sort of like common understanding of a common problem as a DMN TCK. And actually this proved useful because now they can say, okay, this DMN model, the TCK community helped us to ensure that it is a common DMN model. And actually, because it's part of the TCK, they have an insurance, well, unless the OMG changes the specification of DMN, that model will continue to work for the upcoming 1.x version of DMN. But especially true is that it should work in any other vendor. So if I take any of the sort of like industries that I've been hearing during these days, for instance, loan industries and so on. So the base common understanding model, once that is expressed in DMN, and we have example even in the specification, we have example in the TCK, we have many example in DecisionCAMP, but also in the challenges that Jacob publishes on Decision Community. I mean, those are clearly shown that you can model a problem with DMN and are clearly executable, so that can be put in the TCK. Now, if we want to say there are also things that we can do better or that we can do differently in the TCK, of course, we are always open to the conversation, and actually we do that all the time. But
it's not the issue of the TCK, it's an issue of the standard. The standard does not provide for a orchestration component, and therefore the TCK can't test that.
Okay, because then if you want to bring in other standards, then the DMN TCK is only concerned about DMN TCK.
That's my point. That's my point, and that's the response I'm giving.
If we extend the scope of our TCK that embraces other standards too, maybe we can test the boundaries, test the integration even more. Actually, just on this point, this may be a good conversation. On this point, I'll just add a very, sorry, but I'm very technical oriented person, so I'll just try to bring some technical perspective also on this. In the recent years, so from the last DecisionCAMP to today, every time that we did sort of like a demo, of course, a working demo of standards working together, like DMN with PMML for machine learning. It's very hot these days, but of course, showing pragmatic integration of BPMN with DMN. We've actually spawned interest from practitioners and prospects and customers. So maybe the thing is that it's not an issue of the DMN TCK, it's that we don't have a community where we can show in application all these standards. So this is a question that from you that are much more expert than me, maybe can speak about.
Oh, okay, can I just ask, remind you that we do have audience and we vendors to answer their questions, and there are a lot of questions over there, but I believe we're out of time, right? Cindy?
Yes, it's we had planned to finish at the top of the hour. There's definitely some lively discussions going on the Slack
that's
channel,
by the way, one of the huge advantage to compare with our traditional non-virtual things, that we do have Slack channel, and people can think what they type, and then we can answer later different questions, and hopefully we will see more answers from vendors. And I think it was good discussion in general, right?
Yes, I think it was very good. Lots of opinions, some agreement, some disagreement, but you know, a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Tomorrow we're going to be starting off. We start at 16:30 European time, which is 10:30 a.m. on the East Coast or 7:30 a.m. on the West Coast, with a presentation by FlexRule. And we'll have another full day, and then we're going to finish up the day with we'll have a separate Zoom session. We'll put the link in the general channel by tomorrow, where we can have a little after hours, open mic cocktail chat or coffee chat, depending on what time of day you are, at the end of the day, so everybody can say hi to their colleagues.
remind people about poll?
Poll. There's a poll. I forgot about the poll. I put a poll in. It's an anonymous poll, so you don't have to worry about offending anybody. I put a poll in the in yesterday's session track on channel on Slack to just vote for your favorite session, and I'll do the same for today. So if there's something that you particularly like, just give it a thumbs up. You can actually vote for more than one, so you can you know, pass the love around there, and just to give an idea of what you like, and I'm sure that's going to help Jacob for future planning as well.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks.